You've done everything right. You showed up. You stayed loyal when it wasn't convenient. You defended people when they weren't in the room. And somehow, that's the exact thing that got you used, overlooked, or replaced by someone who owed nothing to anyone. If that's ever happened to you, I want you to sit with this thought for a second. What if loyalty, the way you've been taught to practice it, was never actually a virtue? What if it was a liability someone else was counting on? That's the uncomfortable question Niccolo Machiavelli forces you to ask. He wrote in early 16th century Florence, a city that was constantly being fought over by popes, kings, and rival families. He wasn't a philosopher locked away in a library. He was a diplomat and government official who watched alliances form and collapse in real time, who watched loyal men get destroyed by the very people they served. When he finally sat down to write his most famous work, he wasn't interested in how people should behave in some ideal world. He was interested in how they actually behave when power, fear, and self-interest are on the table. That's why this book has survived 500 years. It's not a guide to being good. It's a guide to seeing clearly. Here's where Machiavelli really breaks from almost every moral tradition before him. Most thinkers before him treated loyalty as something close to sacred. Keep your word. Honor your commitments. Loyalty is what separates a good man from a bad one. Machiavelli looks at that and says, fine, in theory, but rulers, and really anyone trying to survive in a world full of self-interested people, cannot afford to operate that way, because the people around them are not operating that way either. His reasoning goes like this: a leader who commits himself to always keeping his word, no matter what, is only trustworthy in a world where everyone else does the same. But that world doesn't exist. People break promises constantly when it benefits them. So a ruler who binds himself rigidly to loyalty and honesty becomes predictable, and predictable people become targets. Machiavelli's argument isn't betray people for fun. His argument is that rigid, unconditional loyalty removes your ability to respond to a world that is not loyal back to you. This is the part people misquote constantly. He's not telling you to become a liar or a snake. What he's actually saying is that a wise leader has to know how to use both the nature of the honest man and the nature of the fox. He compares it to an old idea about two ways to fight: force and cunning. Force alone makes you rigid and exploitable. Cunning alone makes you untrustworthy and isolated. What Machiavelli wants is someone who can operate in both registers, depending on what the moment demands. Someone who keeps commitments when it's wise to keep them, and who's honest with himself about when a commitment has become a trap rather than a bond. He goes even further, and this is the part that makes people uncomfortable. He says a ruler shouldn't feel bound by promises when the reasons that made him make the promise no longer exist, and when the people around him aren't holding up their side either. That's not an invitation to cruelty. He's actually explicit that unnecessary cruelty is bad strategy, not just bad morals, because it breeds hatred, and hatred is what actually destroys leaders. What he's dismantling is something narrower and, honestly, more useful. The idea that loyalty is an unconditional virtue you owe, regardless of what the other side does. He's saying loyalty divorced from judgment isn't nobility. It's just a lack of self-protection dressed up as a virtue. And underneath all of that is a colder observation about human nature. Machiavelli believed people are, by default, self-interested, and that they will act loyal toward you exactly as long as it serves them, and abandon you the moment it doesn't. He's not saying this to make you cynical for its own sake. He's saying it because he watched it happen over and over to rulers who assumed loyalty was mutual just because they offered it first. His whole point is that loyalty has to be paired with awareness. You give it, but you also watch. You commit, but you also notice when the terms have quietly changed. The trap isn't loyalty itself. The trap is loyalty on autopilot. Loyalty that never checks whether it's still being reciprocated.
Now take that out of Renaissance Florence and put it in your actual life, because you've lived this. Think about the friend group, where you're always the one who shows up, always the one who smooths things over, always the one who defends someone the second their name comes up in a room. And somehow, you're still the first person cut when it's convenient for them. Think about the job where you stayed late, covered for your manager, turned down other offers out of some sense of duty, and then watched the promotion go to the guy who showed up 2 years ago and negotiated hard for himself. Think about a relationship where you gave the benefit of the doubt again and again, told yourself that's what loyal people do, and mistook your own consistency for evidence that the other person was equally invested. None of those situations happened because loyalty is a bad thing to have. They happened because loyalty was extended without ever checking if it was being met with anything real on the other side. Machiavelli would look at every one of those situations and say the same thing. You weren't punished for having values. You were punished for refusing to notice, or refusing to admit that the relationship had stopped being mutual. The fox in you is the part that's supposed to notice the pattern before it costs you again. The honest man in you is the part that wants to keep believing this time will be different. Both of those instincts exist in you for a reason. The mistake is running only one of them permanently. This shows up everywhere in how men specifically get trained to think about loyalty, especially the idea that a real man doesn't complain, doesn't renegotiate, doesn't walk away, just grinds it out because that's what loyalty looks like. Machiavelli's whole body of work is basically a rebuttal to that framing. Endurance isn't virtue if it's endurance in a one-directional relationship. Strength isn't staying quiet while someone takes advantage of your consistency. Strength is being able to see the situation exactly as it is and adjusting, even when that feels like it's breaking a rule you were raised to believe was sacred. Here's where I have to slow down, because this idea gets weaponized constantly, especially online. A lot of people take loyalty as a trap and turn it into never commit to anything, never trust anyone, cut people off the second they're inconvenient. That is not what Machiavelli is saying. And if you walk away from this video thinking that, you've actually missed the entire point. Machiavelli never says loyalty is worthless. He says unconditional, unexamined loyalty is dangerous, which is a completely different claim. He was extremely clear that a leader who is seen as constantly betraying people, constantly unreliable, ends up hated and isolated. And hatred is one of the fastest ways a leader gets destroyed in his framework. So this isn't a free pass to treat people as disposable the second it's convenient for you. That's not cunning. That's just short-term thinking wearing a Machiavelli costume. What he's actually asking for is harder than either extreme. Not blind loyalty and not zero loyalty. Loyalty that stays awake. Loyalty that's paired with honest observation about whether it's being returned. You can be someone people can count on and still have the judgment to notice when that trust is being taken advantage of. Those two things aren't in conflict. The trap was never loyalty itself. The trap is loyalty that never asks any questions. So if there's one line to walk away with, it's this: loyalty without judgment isn't virtue,
It's just a door you've left open for anyone to walk through. If this way of looking at things is useful to you, stick around, because this channel is built on pulling ideas like this out of old texts and putting them to work in real life. Subscribe if you want more of it.